Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is March 24th, 2017, and we have kind of a super cool show in store for you. We're going to do something we've kind of never done before, maybe a couple things we've never done before. So to give you a little bit of background, today on Mormon Stories, we're interviewing Trevor. Trevor reached out to me a while back and let me know that he was going to be meeting with the general authority to talk about his faith crisis. This meeting happened just a few weeks ago. It happened on March 3rd. And the general authority that Trevor met with was Don R. Clarke. For those of you who don't know, I'll just read a little bit from Don R. Clarke's bio. Don R. Clarke was sustained a member of the Second Quorum of the 70 in April 1st, 2006, but then a member of the First Quorum of the 70 in April 2nd, 2011. He served as president of the Central American area from 2007 to 2011, and he's currently serving as an assistant executive director in the missionary department. So he's a high-up bureaucrat in the LDS Church for the missionary department, and he's area assistant for the Utah North, Utah Salt Lake City, and Utah South areas. So he's up there, and I'm guessing he works very closely with the presidency of the Quorum of the 70. So that's Don Clarke. Trevor met with Don Clarke, and he met with another gentleman named Matthew Grow. And I'm going to pull up Matthew Grow's profile as well, because it's also very interesting. Matthew Grow, if you go ahead and check his bio on the Joseph Smith Papers Project, you will find that it says the following. He's the director of publications at the Church History Department and a general editor of the Joseph Smith Papers. So he was very, very involved in the Joseph Smith Papers Project. He's co-authored or authored several books by Oxford University Press, Yale University Press. He's done work on, LDS church history. He has a PhD in American history from the University of Notre Dame. And if you listen to the recording that we're going to be sharing, what you'll notice is that Matthew Grow, says that he was heavily involved in those essays that were released. So what we're going to do for this interview is kind of fun. We're going to start with interviewing Trevor a bit about his story. Trevor's got a cool story. It's definitely worth hearing. Then what we're going to do that's new, the first part that we're going to do that's new is we're actually going to play the audio recording of Trevor's interview with the general authority, Elder Don R. Clarke, and with Matthew Grow of the LDS Church History Department. And for me, it's a really fascinating interview because, number one, it's with the general authority. Number two, the general authority stays silent for a lot of it and lets Matthew Grow answer his questions. I think it's really interesting to hear how, let's just say, one of the arch apologists for the Mormon Church, somebody who's deeply embedded in the Church History Department, Joseph Smith Papers Project, the essays. It's interesting to hear how someone like that answers, questions about polygamy, answers questions about Book of Abraham. And this is sort of the cream of the crop for Mormon apologetics, I would say. And so that's going to be fascinating. I think it's a really worthwhile hour and 20 minutes to listen. And then finally, we've invited some brilliant panelists, Lindsay Hanson-Park of Sunstone and Year of Polygamy, John Hamer, who's on Infants on Thrones podcast, but he's also supported the John Whitmer Association, and right now he's the pastor of Community of Christ in Toronto, their congregation, and he's been a real leader with Community of Christ and helping them sort of pursue what's called the Seekers Program, which is providing a landing place for members of the LDS Church who leave but who still want some sort of restoration-based spiritual life. The Community of Christ Seekers Program has been really useful, and John Hamer's really been supportive of that. And he's just been on Mormon Stories a million times, and he's brilliant, and we love him, yada, yada, yada. And then finally, we're also going to have on our panel Glenn Osland. Glenn Osland is the founder or co-founder of Infants on Thrones podcast. He's brilliant. We've had him on Mormon Stories before, and we're just super excited to have kind of a mini infant smackdown with Lindsay Hansen Park joining to sort of dissect this audio interview of Elder Clarke, a general authority, and Matthew Grow of the LDS Church History Department. So we are in for a really fun 3 hours. So those of you who are joining us live on Facebook, we want your comments, we want your questions, we want your feedback. So please be aggressive there, and we'll take your questions and comments throughout the show. So that's a long intro, but Trevor, welcome to Mormon Stories Podcast.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. It's super happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
I really appreciate you reaching out. So we'll talk in a bit about why you wanted to share your audio recording of your meeting with Elder Clarke and Matthew Grow. But let's save that, because I think what I really like to do first is set the context. And I think you've got a really interesting story about your commitment to the church, your experiences as a Mormon prior to your mission experience, and then after your mission experience, what led to your faith crisis, and then what enabled you to get a general authority and Matt Grow to meet with you. So do you mind starting with your story?
That sounds great. Do you want to kick it off with a question, or should
I?
Yeah.
Let's, as infants have primed us, talk to us about your Mormon credibility scale. Where, do you have multi-generational Mormon heritage? Start there.
Yeah. So I'll just start. I'm 35 years old. I live in South Jordan, kind of the Mecca here, and I grew up on the Wasatch Front. Currently, I own a production company called Haugen Creative, where we make films and produce video. But yeah, I have kind of the classic Mormon story, I guess. Growing up, did everything that a typical Mormon family would do in Utah. Family prayers every single night. My parents were really good at that. We'd go through streaks where we would read the scriptures as a family, but it was definitely, kind of taught, that we read the scriptures ourselves. Was taught tithing. I always took that very serious, and I always prided myself in the sense that I never missed paying tithing. And I would even pay like more just in case I was like somehow getting the math wrong. And so I was always kind of trying to go above and beyond. I would have fun with it. I try not to take things too serious because, I kind of wanted to attract people to the faith that way. You know what I mean? And so yeah, that's pretty much it. My dad was my scout leader growing up. So, I always joke that my dad got his eagle twice, once for himself and then second through me vicariously.
That's awesome.
Wasn't so much for me, but I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it. And, but I mean, my parents, they raised us 5 kids the best they, knew how to, with a lot of love, and just had a really happy childhood. Great family.
How talk about your testimony. Did you have a good experience as a Mormon youth? Did you attend seminary? Did you gain a testimony? Talk about that.
Yeah. So I lived everything to the fullest. I think I was very like adamant on following like the word of wisdom. Never touched drugs or alcohol. Was never even a temptation for me. But I got my, Duty of God Award, graduated seminary, institute. How deep do I go here? I mean, I was a virgin when I got married.
So you were in it to win.
Barely, come on, but we made it. And, but yeah, I mean, just, I had a testimony, I kind of received a testimony, I guess kind of like twice in a way, because the first time I got a testimony, I feel like it was kind of like a pressured feeling, like crap. I'm being expected to serve a mission for 2 years. I should probably figure out if this is true.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of social pressure that comes down to that. I hadn't, I always assumed it was true, but I had never kind of done put Moroni 10 to the test per se. So before my mission, I read the entire Book of Mormon, made a lot of notes, and took it really serious. And then I remember praying, and this is right before I put in my papers. And I was sitting there and I was just, I was waiting for, this big, burning in the bosom kind of feeling. And it just, coming. And so I kind of just like, I remember like wanting to feel it so bad that I feel like it was almost like a forced kind of like feeling. I don't know. I mean, that's the first time that I kind of like, I was like, okay, well, I feel good enough. I think maybe that's the feeling they're talking about. The second time I got a testimony was the real deal. That was in the MTC. And, you know, I know a lot of missionaries are like ready to get out of the MTC and get to the field. But for me, like, I didn't want to leave the MTC because I just felt the Spirit so strong there, you know? And it was awesome. It was a really cool environment. So that's where I was like, this is it. You know, this is true, you know?
So it wasn't from like, you know, kneeling down and reading the Book of Mormon. It was just the feeling that the MTC gave you. It just felt amazing, and you knew it was true.
Yeah. I mean, I always felt good about stuff, you know what I mean? But it wasn't like this, you know what I mean? Like overwhelming spiritual confirmation, I guess you could say. So yeah, so the MTC was, I mean, they know what they're doing there, you know? They got a good system, but it worked.
Okay. But you were, but at least for a time, you were just absolutely believing and.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I had no reason to question. No
okay.
reason.
So tell us again where you went on your mission.
So I served in the Bolivia Santa Cruz mission.
Okay. And your mission president was who?
So my mission president, so this is all going to kind of tie together. My first mission president was Elder Shumway. And then my second mission president is Elder Don Clarke. Okay.
And real quick, like what type of mission did you have? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you, leadership positions? What was that like?
I mean, it was definitely difficult. I mean, the first 6 to 9 months, I think for any missionary is hard. The one letter that never made it home was my letter, telling my dad that I wanted to come home because I wasn't going to get the Spanish. But you end up figuring it out and then just really enjoying it. I had a lot of fun with my mission. Some areas I was in, I felt like I was like in a Planet Earth or like National Geographic episode. It was really remote. It's like, what am I doing here? We would, there wasn't much in ways of like commodities, like even heating water, electricity, all that kind of stuff. And I remember filling the fonts up to baptize these people, and the water was so freezing that literally people would like start going down into the water and like totally just, give my salvation's important, but not that important. Like it was freezing, And so we, it was definitely an experience. And, but I really enjoyed it. We would give people blessings. They seemed to get better. Seemed like we were doing good things. I did try casting the devil out a couple times, and that wasn't too successful, but
the devil wouldn't leave?
He just wouldn't go, man.
Oh,
he was insistent.
What a pesky little booger.
Yeah. But
okay.
It was great.
So were you district leader, zone leader, any of that stuff?
Yeah, district leader, zone leader. I then went on to become AP as well, and so worked really closely with Elder Clarke.
Okay, so you were Elder Clarke's zoney or AP.
AP, yeah.
Okay, yep. Wow. So tell us what he was like as a mission president.
Amazing, actually. Very, very, very driven. He would teach us that nothing was impossible, to always find solutions. He was a very successful businessman, prior to being a mission president. He took a lot of that into the mission and was really successful. There were a couple of things that bothered me about the mission when he first came in, mainly the big focus on baptism, and I was noticing that the missionaries that were like most obedient or most spiritual weren't necessarily the ones having the most success. It seemed like the salesman type missionaries were the ones that were always, getting the baptisms. And it was just really focused on numbers, on baptizing people. And the quality wasn't always great, mostly it was really, really, uneducated people or young people or kids, and so I wanted to see that change. And when Elder Clarke came in, I think he made a very he was very determined to change that. And I think he started to change that kind of mentality in the mission, kind of focusing more on retention and such.
Okay, so he wasn't just in it to score numbers. He was trying to bring quality families into the church.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously the focus was still there. Like, you can't get rid of that completely, but yeah, the focus changed a little bit to retention and, and families and stuff like that.
What was he like? Was he like a businessman? Was he like a spiritual giant? Like what, with what personality did he lead the mission?
Yeah, it was a good mix between the two, but I would say a very, very, very heavy on the business side, because he would bring a lot of experiences. But I mean, that's what he had to draw from. You know what I mean?
What's his background? Do you know?
I know he was in. Oh, I don't even want to go there because I might screw it up. You know what I mean? But
no, it's okay.
But I think he consulted a lot of companies on sales and marketing and such.
Okay, I'm just going to read here. Elder Clarke earned an associate's degree from Rick's College and a bachelor's degree in business from BYU. He completed a master's degree in business administration from Washington State University. His career included senior executive positions in several retailing companies. So he was a retailer, basically.
Yeah, he helped a lot of companies save a lot of money. So he figured out ways to do things, less expensive, I guess you could say.
Okay. Cool.
So, yeah, all right. So he's always, he's solution driven, just great guy. I really do have a lot of respect for him.
And anything that you want to share about your personal interactions with him? Did you ever have problems that he helped you fix, or things you were struggling with that he helped you, or really cool things he did on his mission, or really cool moments you had with him? Anything you would want to share, or is it just a normal, mission president missionary relationship?
He would call me sometimes. I think we were supposed to get up at 6:30, or anyway, I might be off on that, but it's been a while, John. But so let's say 6:20 rolls around, he's calling me, because as APs we had cell phones. We're the only ones with cell phones. He would call me and he'd be like, "Good afternoon," as if I'd slept in. I should always be up a half an hour earlier, than it says. I should be in a half an hour earlier. I should be reading my scriptures, a few minutes longer, whatever, So yeah, he was always expecting greatness from us. And I think that was something that I carried through my life, after the mission. So
did that kind of make you want to be better and do better? Was it motivating to you?
Yeah, it was motivating. Yeah. But also very, he's an intimidating guy, because he has had so much success in his life, and he is very, he speaks very direct and very plainly with things. And so, so at the same time, I didn't feel like I could always just voice concerns or talk plainly with him. It was just kind of yes, sir, kind of situation, Okay. And I was fine with that, because he knew what he was doing.
Okay, cool. So, last question, any big things happen on your mission, like scandals or problems or major accomplishments with Elder Clarke that you, or President Clarke at the time, that are worth mentioning?
Well, we started having a lot of success in the mission. He kind of instilled in us this idea of that you can do anything and everything's possible. And so when I actually left from being an AP, I actually went back into the field for 4.5 months before I finished my mission. And just our zone alone, I believe there were 7 companionships, but we were baptizing over 100 people a month. And that's
just in one zone?
One zone.
So what were total baptisms for the mission in a month?
I mean, I would say maybe 600-ish, maybe 800.
That's crazy. That's maybe crazy. 600 to 800 per month.
That's a lot.
That's the same old stuff, same old stuff.
Yeah. And so, we're trying to focus, the attention, but at the same time, it's still a mission, and I think there are numbers that the church wants to see. Maybe there's a little bit of pressure on that side, but the intentions had changed. You know what I mean? but the numbers hadn't changed.
but the numbers stayed. And those are,
yeah.
and
I mean, that's what you get praised for at the end of the day. You know, you want your zone to be the golden zone, you know, at the end of the month. You know, you want your leaders and your group to be feeling like, you know, they're part of the greatest zone in the mission, you know? And
yeah. Totally. So. Gary writes, I barely got 6 baptisms on my whole mission in Nebraska. 600 a month is crazy. Thanks for that comment, Gary.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing that I've noticed since I've been back is I've talked to friends that have served like in Europe, and it's crazy because, you know, most of the time I'm like, so did you have much success? How was that? You know, and was it hard? And, you know, they say usually it's, you know, maybe 3 baptisms, 5 baptisms or whatever. And I'm like, wow. So who are these people? And I come to find out most of them are like immigrants from different countries, farmers. You know what I mean? Like I baptized a guy in Italy, but he was from Peru, you know, or an 8-year-old kid or something. And so yeah. And then I look at my mission and it's just insane. The contrast, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So so it sounds like you left your mission just on cloud 9, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I got back, continued to live the gospel, served in a lot of callings back home. I didn't let it, you know, slide. Obviously I started focusing on my life, my career, studying, all that kind of stuff. But I did serve in the church in a lot of different callings.
So talk about like, your trajectory. What, you know, did you marry in the temple? Did you go to school?
Yeah. First got married when I was 23, got sealed in the temple, to my first wife, I should say. And to make a long story short, we were married for 5.5 years and that just didn't work out.
Do you feel like you married too quickly? Like you didn't quite know her?
Right. Yeah. There was a little bit of that. We grew a lot in our 20s and kind of became different people with different goals. You know, she was a great girl. It was just kind of the odds were stacked against us a little bit. Okay. And so when I was 29, we got a divorce, and then I went back to my mission 10 years later and decided, you know, to kind of, you know, go visit some people. And that's where I met my now wife. So, you know,
so you married someone from Bolivia that you met when you returned to Bolivia.
I did. Yeah. And I hadn't known her. I didn't meet her in the mission, but I met her there, and
that's what they all say, Trevor.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, you got it.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I wish I would have met her, you know, 10 years earlier. Expedited the process a little bit, but yeah, no.
Did you marry her in the temple?
We did. We initially got sealed we initially got married in Bolivia, just civilly, because we wanted to get the immigration process going. And then I came back. We lived apart for about a year, which was hard to say the least. But the church was something we had in common, and it was something that we took very serious. We would pray together every single night. We would read the scriptures together. We felt very strong together. She got here and we got sealed in the temple, in the Salt Lake temple.
Did you have to have your sealing to your previous wife canceled or not?
So I tried, but you know, she wasn't married yet. And so I guess the policy is, you know, to reach the highest degree of celestial kingdom, you know, you need that saving ordinance. So so that was denied, but you know, I'm not complaining. I had two wives waiting for me, so it was great. No,
how did she feel? How did she feel about remaining sealed? Your ex-wife feel about remaining sealed to you while you were getting sealed to somebody else?
I don't think she might. I don't know. I never asked her, but
how did your second wife feel about you staying sealed to your first wife?
That's probably more of a So she didn't like it at all.
How'd you like it?
I mean, you know, I was bugged by it. You know, I talked to local leaders about it. What do I got to do? And just kind of like, well, you got to wait until she decides to get sealed again, you know? And so that was something that would eat away at, especially my wife, you know, Veronica, she didn't like that idea that I was sealed to 2 people, you know, and especially when a lot of people would talk about polygamy, like we don't practice it anymore. And it's like, are you sure? You know, like, because my husband sealed to 2 people, you know, but we didn't really let it affect our testimony. I mean, we still,
sure,
served in, mainly Spanish speaking wards here in the South Jordan area. And I felt like that's where I could kind of, use my talents to the best of their ability, and served as an executive secretary, worked in the elders quorum with the young men, taught. Anyway, so yeah.
Okay. So what started your faith crisis? What happened? How old were you and what happened?
All right. So I was, so this was 2015. So I was about 34 years old. And I, the policy came out, and I don't think it's anybody leaving the church. I don't think it's ever one thing, right? I think it's always a series of events that happen, because there's a breaking down, like a deconstruction of your faith, right? That was very true for me, because the policy came out of children, with gay parents not being able to participate, in church, and I just, and then that later became a doctrine, if I'm not mistaken. But it just didn't sit well with me. Like I got a bad feeling about it. I was trying to, look into all the positive reasons, justify it the best that I could, but there was just something that just, like, I don't know, it left me like a sick feeling inside. It's like when you're eating a meal. This is the best way to put it. You're enjoying a meal, and then you look down about halfway through and you see something that kind of like grosses you out, like something doesn't look right or something. And you're kind of like, you put that to the side, but it's not enough to stop eating. Like, you still keep eating it, but you're just a little more weary, That's kind of where I was at. I was just I started just looking at it a little differently. That's kind of where it started. And then about 6 months later, I ventured off to do a film in Southeast Asia, and the film was. What
was it? Tell us about the film just a little bit.
Okay, so the name of the film is Jijivisha. It's spelled Jijivisha, and it means in Hindu the desire to continue on, to live on. So it wasn't so much about Buddhism, but it was kind of like a Planet Earth type style. Silent documentary, if you will, but it definitely centered around Buddhism, since, all of the places that we were filming were, cultures. It was about cultures and traditions that have lived on, through the ages in Southeast Asia. Super interesting, and me and my buddy that co-produced the film with me, we studied a lot about Buddhism, a lot about their culture and traditions, for about a year leading up to this. And it started just kind of opening my mind to different possibilities, but it wasn't until I actually went there and lived there for a bit and hung out with these people and saw the commitment, level that they have to their faith and what they believe, and the experiences that they've had, the spiritual conviction that they have. And I remember coming home and telling my friend, if we were born in Thailand or Myanmar, do you think we would be Buddhists today? It was just like a thought that I'd never really, I just never thought of that, like would I even have an open enough mind in that scenario to even look at something like Mormonism, or would I lasso all of my spiritual experiences that I'd had up to that point in my life to Buddhism, And so I started to kind of step outside myself and take a look at me, kind of from the outside looking in, and my belief. I mean, I believed in something that I was handed. I'd never looked into anything. I'd never read the Quran, for example, and prayed about it, And so, so that just started opening my mind to things. But still, I wasn't to the point where I'm like, I'm going to go investigate the church or anything like that. I was still very determined not to look at any negative things against the church at that point,
So what changed? So
what changed was summer of last year, and me and my wife, because she came along with me as well, and we've kind of been, we've been talking, so we've been kind of opening our mind to things at the same time. But in the matter of like a week, we heard about this thing called the CES letter. Which I'd never
tell us what year was that about?
This is 2016, summer of 2016.
Okay. Got it.
Believe it or not, I had never heard of the CES letter before.
Got it.
And never even heard of most of these issues that are in the CES letter. And so we were just hearing about it from so many different people. You know, like we were at the park and we talked to somebody that's now an apostate. And I'm like, oh, wow, if you don't mind me asking, like, what led to that, you know, and CES letter. Or, you know, I'm hanging out with some people and it's like, oh, yeah, we decided to resign because of the CES letter. And, you know, it was almost like I felt like I was driven to look at this. And so luckily, me and Veronica, we decided to look at it and read it together. And that's where it all started.
So you guys read, and she was open. She was willing to read it.
Luckily, yeah. My wife was right there by my side. She didn't, I don't think her faith deconstructed or fell apart as quickly as mine did. We definitely had, you know, a few months where I was going back and forth, you know, and you know, I would be like, no, this is it. This is done. But then I'd be like, well, what does it hurt? You know, what does it hurt to just go to church? You know what I mean? And just kind of play along or whatever. Like, you know, like maybe this is still a good thing kind of thing. And we were going like that, but there was just too much that I read into to just let it be, you know, like I had to know.
What were the biggest issues bugging you? Just tell us the top 3 or 5.
Well, you'll see my top 5 in the recording, so I won't go into too much detail. But my biggest thing was spiritual, you know, confirmation.
Just epistemology. You know, don't other believers of other religions claim the same type of emotional or spiritual witness, right?
Right. I would think that most people in the world are spiritual, and most people that are religious tie their spirituality to a religion. So how am I any different? And I can't step into their body, so I will never know if what they're feeling is stronger than what I'm feeling, and vice versa. So it's pretty arrogant for me to say that, you know, what I have in this tiny little box that I was given, that's the ultimate end all truth. And so that was probably my biggest thing. But obviously,
just list the 4 or 5.
Yeah. So Book of Abraham, and just this whole gift of translation that Joseph Smith claimed to have. The Book of Mormon, all the anachronisms that go along with that, DNA, no archaeological evidence that directly supports the Book of Mormon. Joseph Smith, I feel like, so I got a lot out of the CS letter, but I was definitely cross-checking it. And not only just cross-checking it online, but I was also ordering a lot of books. I felt like I hadn't I was like eating books like I hadn't eaten in a couple of years. I was just plowing through information, and I learned a lot about Joseph Smith, and learned that he wasn't quite the man that I thought he was, you know? And, I mean, I knew a little bit about the polygamy, didn't look too much into that, but the polyandry is one thing that just really caught me off guard.
And polyandry, you mean what?
So polyandry meaning that Joseph Smith had wives that were married to other men. And a lot of times these men had the priesthood as well. And these men were alive, you know? I mean, why would a prophet of God need to get sealed to women that are already married to members of the church?
And what about the 14, 15-year-olds? Was that a problem?
Of course. But, you know, for some reason, I think I kind of knew that. Yeah. I just never let it bother me for some reason. You know, it's weird. It's weird now looking, like, from the outside looking in, like, wow, you know, I mean, there are a lot of things, you know, but you know, you just kind of, you go with it. You assume it's not a big deal.
So any big happenings prior to you trying to get an audience with Elder Clarke? Anything you want to tell us about your story before we jump into?
Yeah. I do want to say that, you know, a lot of people look, you know, maybe they'll look at a couple things. Maybe they'll peruse the, you know, CS letter, or they'll look at some of the concerns that people are having, and they'll see there's a defense with the church, right? They'll see that the church has a stance, or the apologetics have a stance. And a lot of people, I think a lot of times I think it stems from fear or comfort, not wanting to step outside of something that's foreign to them. I don't know. There's probably a lot of psychological reasons to it, but they just look at the defense real quick. They just want to know there is a defense to it. Me, on the other hand, I was like, no, like, I really want to put this on trial. I want to see what the church is saying. I want to see what the truth is out there, and you know what I mean? Like, I want to see what stands up, and so I've been very sincere, through this whole process. I remember one day just whispering to myself, the church isn't true, and it was the scariest thought I'd ever had.
How long ago was that? Do you remember what month?
This was probably November of 2016.
Okay.
October, November.
So just 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah. And this was something that I wanted to remember, me being kind of a documentarian and like basically videoing my whole life. I did a lot of video journal entries, documenting my experience, and me now looking back on those. I watched a video just the other day from my experience, and it tears me up inside because, I felt so beaten down, and confused, and I felt alone, and I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it, and John, this is, something I got to thank you for, because, your podcast saved my life. Because it's a hard thing, I didn't want to leave the church, Sorry. I didn't want to leave the church, I was hoping that it would be true. But I couldn't go back on what I knew. It reminded me a lot of the Matrix, I'd taken the blue pill or the red pill, and I couldn't pretend that I'd taken the blue pill. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of people in my same boat. I know people personally that are going through this right now, and it's not an easy thing, and you don't quite understand it, until you go through it. But the reason I've documented all these things was because people need that support. People need to know that they're not alone, and I think that people need to know what the church's stance really is on this stuff. When you make a claim, to be the only true church on the face of the earth, I think it's important that you're honest. If you have the most correct book that exists, on earth, I think it's important that that's true. These are big claims, and so they should be able to back that up. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but yeah,
that's beautiful. It was beautiful.
Why.
Thank you. And if I can just echo, if they're going to require 10% of your income, if they're going to keep you out of a temple and prevent you from attending the wedding of a loved one, if a faith crisis can jeopardize a marriage and a family, and if pronouncements about LGBT people or women can cause depression or anxiety or even suicide and death, the stakes are super high. And messages about sexuality that can lead someone who can't stop masturbating, want to kill themselves, or even cut themselves off, cut off a part of them because the trauma is so hard about not being able to stop being evil or dirty. The stakes are super high. And so,
yeah, families are definitely being ripped apart by this, like you said, people are killing themselves over this stuff, right. And so I think they need to understand that people believe them in a very literal sense. When they say they're prophets, seers, and revelators, we as members of the church, we believe that they're having this personal conversation or something, or apparition with Jesus Christ, and they allow it to be assumed. And I think that's just not okay.
Yeah, totally.
But anyway, so
Beautiful. Yeah.
I would like to say one thing that, I mean, maybe just kind of one last thing that might help people out there that might be going through something similar. I know we want to get to, to this recording and everything, but I just, I feel like a lot of people are afraid of leaving a religion, leaving the church, because you've had it your whole life, right? It's a scary frontier. You don't know life without the church. But once you realize that you don't need a specific religion, like life is like, it's so exciting. Like I wish I could talk to myself, 6 months ago or a year ago, and just say like, it's going to be awesome. Like instead of assuming it's all taken care of, you can actually now go out and discover what actually brings you joy, who you really are, what works for you, so your life can be the best life that
Sure.
you can be, and
Sure.
you don't need religion. And John could echo this, but you don't need religion to have God in your life. You don't need it to have morality or spirituality in your life.
Right.
And I learned how to separate those. But anyway, talking to my family about it though, I listened to your panel discussion that you had, and
Which one?
I was waiting.
Which panel?
So it was Mormon transitions. It was maybe in, I think it was January of this year. And maybe we can put a link to it after or something. I don't know. But you were talking about people transitioning, how to talk to people. And I think I was waiting for that. I knew I had to talk to my family, since I knew it wasn't true since November. And I was putting it off. And it just got to the point where I was like, I need to deal with this. This is not something that you can just forget about. And so, it's like, I think everybody asks that, right? Do I write a letter? Do I make it all complicated? Do I just send a simple text? Like, what do I do? And I think one thing that helped me, that, kind of the conclusion that you and the panel came up with was keeping it simple, And so when I talked to my siblings about it, it was a conversation that we had, and I just said that my views had changed, in regards to the church. And we've decided not to participate. It's, I don't want you to feel like I am going to ever try to convince you. This is what I believe, and I think it's important you know that. But we don't need to talk about it. It doesn't need to be awkward, And if you ask me questions, obviously I'm going to be honest with you, but I'm never going to push any of this on you. The one exception was my parents. I regret that a little bit, but I think there were things said both ways that we regret. But I think it was just because I have such a close relationship with my parents, I just couldn't not tell them exactly why. And I gave them like maybe the CS letter in 20 minutes, just. But all in all, I think it went well. Things are mending from then. It's been a couple months since I've told them. I don't feel like my family doesn't love me. I think it's all about love, understanding, patience, on both sides, And anyway, I told my parents, I said, I will talk to anybody. And, we don't need to talk about it anymore. But if there's somebody you want me to talk to about it, if it makes you feel better, I'll do it. And so they contacted my mission president, who's now Elder Clarke in the First Quorum of the 70. He contacted me. We went to lunch first. And the first meeting, unfortunately, was pretty fruitless. I was disappointed a little bit because I was expecting to go in and get all these miraculous answers to all of my questions.
How did you set up the meeting? You just emailed him and said, "Hey, let's talk." Did you?
Yeah,
Did you prime him in your email with your concerns?
We talked on the phone. I've stayed fairly close to him. He's been doing mission reunions. I mean, since he got back from the mission, believe it or not, I was still going to mission reunions 15 years after my mission. So that'll give you on the member scale. I don't know, but anyway, so we've stayed very close. I talked to him on the phone, and we've had very open, sincere conversations about it, and he was very kind and loving about it. But what was kind of disappointing was him not answering my questions and just more sidestepping everything and just kind of basically telling me, and I think he literally said this, look, I don't profess to know all the answers. I don't profess to be the smartest person, but I know people that do that. I'm too busy to try to figure all of that out. But there are guys that do spend their time doing that. And that was kind of scary to me, because this is somebody in the first quorum of the 70, somebody that could very well be an apostle for the church, that says, I don't know. And that was, for me, that was scary. You know, it was disappointing. I left that meeting feeling very empty. He just, every concern I had, he would say, just put it in an email. Just go ahead and put it in an email, put it in an email. And I mean, I guess I can understand he wants to make sure he takes a good approach at it. Instead of debating it, he wants to maybe look through the things, get familiar with it. But what ended up happening is he set up a second meeting. And this time it was with Matt Grow. And, and so, as you know, Matt Grow is the director of publications for LDS Church History Department. So I was really excited to meet with this guy, and this time I decided to record the conversation. And the biggest reason I decided to, was because I wanted to have it for me personally, just to remember exactly what they said, what they believed, because I'm confused on their stance and what they actually believe. And I felt like this was a golden opportunity, a general authority with one of the top historians of the church. And I also wanted to have it so that I could prove to my parents that I was actually talking to these people, and maybe share it with my, close family. But that was it. One thing you'll notice when you listen to the conversation is it's not a debate. I didn't go in there with that mentality. I literally wanted to just go in and know what they truly believe. And so a lot of things I went along with, but that wasn't my intention. It was more just to be able to share with people what is at the heart of the church and what people are actually believing. And I honestly think them hearing this back or finding out, because, honestly, this is going to be a shock. They are most likely unaware that this recording exists. I imagine they'll be shocked to find that I'm sharing it, but at the same time, I can't imagine them being too upset, because this is what they believe and this is what they want to share with people. So.
So why wouldn't they? I mean, if he's a special witness for the church, if he's an authority figure, a general authority in the first quorum of the 70, what does he have to hide? Why wouldn't he want his testimony to be shared on the rooftops to all? And if Matt Grow represents the church history department, if he's at the highest levels, why would he not want to share with the world whatever wisdom he has to help people through a faith crisis, right?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe this would be any message they would give to anybody that's doubting. And this is your audience, John. So I think they would actually be thrilled to be able to be talking to your audience today. So I hope that's how they see it, because this is not like, hey, let's reveal who the Wizard of Oz really is kind of thing. It's not like that. You know what I mean? It's not in a demeaning way. I'm very sincere, and I want to share it with people that are in the same boat as I am.
Right. And so real quickly, where did you meet? When did you meet? What was it like going into the room?
Yeah. So the second meeting, we first met in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, and then Elder Clarke walked me over to, and my wife came with me. She's so awesome. My wife came with me. She was holding my hand through the whole meeting. She was awesome. You won't hear her much. She laughs every once in a while, but she kind of leaves the talking to me. But she was there supporting me through the whole thing, which was awesome. We went into the Church History Museum. First thing I saw when I walked into the Church History Museum were those kind of bronze cutout like statues of the witnesses with the Book of Mormon, standing over the Book of Mormon, touching them, flipping through the plates. And I just got this just just sick feeling, and just looking around, I was just like, wow, because I hadn't gone into some of these spaces since I had left the church, and so now to see it from a different perspective was crazy. Then he brought us up to, whatever floor he was on. We walked around a little bit. And we met deep inside this, the Church History Museum up in his, Matt Groh's office.
So you met in Matt Groh's office?
Yep.
Okay. I have to just ask, what was that like emotionally? You were an AP for this mission president who was so powerful. Now he's a general authority. And you're not only meeting on his turf in the super powerful, ostentatious sort of environment, but you're admitting this super vulnerable thing, which is, I used to be up here in your eyes, and now I'm going to be down here in your eyes, and I'm going to be admitting that I don't believe anymore, and I'm really struggling. What's that like for you emotionally to have to attend that event?
A lot of nerves, a lot of anxiety leading up to it. It's not that I was nervous about the information that I was going to bring, but like I said, he's a very kind of intimidating kind of person. And I'd never quite stepped up, and confronted him on anything or anything like that. So it was definitely kind of a change, as far as like how our relationship had been up to that point. And so, so it was scary. I mean, it was similar to talking to my dad about it. It's not the easiest thing, but it's something that needs to happen.
Sure. With the general authority, Elder Don R. Clarke, and with Matthew Groh of the LDS Church History Department. And for me, it's a really fascinating interview because, number one, it's with the general authority. Number two, the general authority stays silent for a lot of it and lets Matthew Groh answer his questions. I think it's really interesting to hear how, let's just say, one of the arch apologists for the Mormon Church, somebody who's deeply embedded in the Church History Department, Joseph Smith Papers Project, the essays. It's interesting to hear how someone like that answers, questions about polygamy, answers questions about Book of Abraham. And this is sort of the cream of the crop for Mormon apologetics, I would say. And so that's going to be fascinating. I think it's a really worthwhile hour and 20 minutes to listen. And then finally, we've invited some brilliant panelists, Lindsay Hanson-Park of Sunstone and Year of Polygamy, John Hamer, who's on Infants on Thrones podcast, but he's also Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John DeLynn. It is March 24th, 2017, and we have kind of a super cool show in store for you. We're going to do something we've kind of never done before, maybe a couple things we've never done before. So to give you a little bit of background, today on Mormon Stories, we're interviewing Trevor. Trevor reached out to me a while back and let me know that he was going to be meeting with the general authority to talk about his faith crisis. This meeting happened just a few weeks ago. It happened on March 3rd, supported the John Whitmer Association, and right now he's the pastor of Community of Christ in Toronto, their congregation, and he's been a real leader with Community of Christ and helping them sort of pursue what's called the Seekers Program, which is providing a landing place for members of the LDS Church who leave, but who still want some sort of restoration-based spiritual life. The Community of Christ Seekers Program has been really useful, and John Hamer's really been supportive of that. And he's just been on Mormon Stories a million times, and he's brilliant, and we love him, yada, yada, yada. And then finally, we're also going to have on our panel Glenn Osland. Glenn Osland is the founder or co-founder of Infants on Thrones podcast. He's brilliant. We've had him on Mormon Stories before, and we're just super excited to have kind of a mini infant smackdown with Lindsay Hansen Park joining to sort of dissect this audio interview of Elder Clarke, a general authority, and Matthew Grow of the LDS Church History Department. So we are in for a really fun 3 hours. So those of you who are joining us, and the general authority that Trevor met with was Don R. Clarke. For those of you who don't know, I'll just read a little bit from Don R. Clarke's bio. Don R. Clarke was sustained a member of the Second Quorum of the 70 in April 1st, 2006, but then a member of the First Quorum of the 70 in April 2nd, 2011. He served as president of the Central American area from 2007 to 2011, and he's currently serving as an assistant executive director in the missionary department. So he's a high up bureaucrat in the LDS Church for the missionary department, and he's area assistant for the Utah North, Utah Salt Lake City, and Utah South areas. So he's up there, and I'm guessing he works very closely with the presidency of the Quorum of the 70. So that's Don Clarke. Trevor met with Don Clarke, and he met with another gentleman named Matthew Grow. And I'm going to pull up Matthew Grow's profile as well, because it's also very interesting. Matthew Grow, if you go ahead and check his bio on the Joseph Smith Papers Project, you will find that it says the following. He's the director of publications at the Church History Department and a general editor of the Joseph Smith Papers. So he was very, very involved in the Joseph Smith Papers Project. He's co-authored or authored several books by Oxford University Press, Yale University Press. He's done work on, LDS Church history. He has a PhD in American history from the University of Notre Dame. And if you listen to the recording that we're going to be sharing, what you'll notice is that Matthew Grow, says that he was heavily involved in those essays that were released. So what we're going to do for this interview is kind of fun. We're going to start with interviewing Trevor a bit about his story. Trevor's got a cool story. It's definitely worth hearing. Then what we're going to do that's new, the first part that we're going to do that's new is we're actually going to play the audio recording of Trevor's interview